Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about 1986's Cobra, starring Sylvester Stallone, Brigitte Nielsen. Andrew Robinson's also in the film. Andrew Robinson, if you've ever seen the original Dirty Harry, he played a Scorpio killer. He was the dad in Hellraiser. He was also in, if you've ever seen Pumpkinhead 2, he was the sheriff slash father in that movie, although that movie pales in comparison to the original. But he's also in the movie as kind of a dick lieutenant. He's kind of a dick to Cobra. Stallone plays Marion Cobretti in the movie. And around this time, Stallone was just coming off of Rocky IV, which was a huge hit domestically and internationally. And he also just came off of Rambo First Blood Part 2. Now, funny enough, he reteamed in that movie, in First Blood Part 2 and this movie were both directed by George P. Cosmatos. Although around this time, Stallone almost did Beverly Hills Cop. Originally, the script for Beverly Hills Cop was created as a vehicle for Dana Carvey and John Lovitz. Funny enough, it was even more of a comedy, obviously, with those two guys. But they were going to play cops, but it was going to be like a buddy cop movie. And then that version fell through. And then they brought Stallone in, and Stallone rewrote the script and made it more of an action picture. Now, the studio got nervous because the budget went up because of all the action set pieces that Stallone had put in the picture, and they didn't want to spend that much money on it. And Stallone left the project. And when he left, he took what he worked on with the script with him, and he incorporated that into the script for Cobra because Stallone wrote the script. And as we know with Beverly Hills Cop, Eddie Murphy got cast, and the rest is cinema history. Now with this movie, this was originally conceived as a new franchise for Stallone. At this point, he had obviously the Rocky series and the Rambo series. And this was conceived as like the next big thing for him. Give him a third franchise, possibly. And funny enough, this is also a co-produced picture with Canon Pictures. Canon Pictures was known in the 80s as making a lot of lower budget action films. Did a lot of Chuck Norris movies like the Missing in Action movies. They did Delta Force, which is probably one of their higher budget movies up till that point. They did Delta Force 2 in the late 80s, early 90s too. And they did Invasion USA, and they did some other stuff. They did Superman 4 eventually, which bankrupted the company. And then around this time, they were starting to have problems. Matter of fact, that's why you won't see Canon's logo on the film when you watch it. You only see Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers end up paying for most of what you see. Funny enough, though, Stallone reteamed with Canon the next year when Over the Top came out, which has gone on to become a cult classic. I really enjoy that movie. Even with all its 80s cheesiness, it's just a fun movie to watch. Now, this movie was based on a book called Fair Game. I don't know. I never read the book, so I have no idea how close the movie is to the book. I do not know. I know they made another Fair Game in the 90s, if you remember, with Cindy Crawford and one of the Baldwin brothers. I don't know if that version's any closer to the book or what. No idea. But as it stands, this movie, Cobra, based on the book Fair Game, starts off with a grocery store. It's Christmas time. Although they don't dwell on the holiday, it's Christmas time. It's not like Die Hard, which, yes, Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but this is not. It's just set around Christmas. It's a grocery store, and this guy walks in, pulls out a shotgun, starts shooting up the place, and takes hostages. And the cops set a perimeter, and when they realize they're not getting anywhere with this guy, they're told to bring in the Cobra, which is when we're first introduced to Stallone's character. And he works on what they call it, the zombie squad. He basically works on this squad of guys, basically just him and his partner, who they bring in to do what nobody else wants to do or can do. Pretty much the gist. And he shows up and he goes in, he takes care of business, and that's the beginning of the movie, and that's our introduction to Marion Cobretti. Then we cut to, there's a serial killer stalking LA called the Night Stalker, played by Brian Thompson, who's really good as the Night Stalker. He's really good. He's menacing, and he's everything you want a villain to be. Although a little one note, but they don't spend too much time with him because the movie's only 87 minutes long, which I'll get into later about how it got to 87 minutes long. and he's killing people, and eventually he sets his sights on this model played by Brigitte Nielsen. She doesn't see him kill this woman under this overpass, but she drives by and sees him and these other people around, and the guy sees her face clearly, and he finds out who she is, and he finds out that she's having this photo shoot in this building, and this is how she becomes involved. And there's this really classic '80s montage showing her at her photo shoots, like intercut with her photo shoot with these really weird looking robots, this cheesy '80s music over top of it, and then it cuts between Cobra and his partner going around LA asking for information about the Night Stalker, and about the Night Stalker and his cohorts getting ready to go after her. And then they do go after her, they fail, they kill a bunch of people, but they miss her and she gets away. And Cobra's convinced that it's a group of people, not just one. But the rest of the police force don't believe him. And she ends up in the hospital, and the Night Stalker goes after her there, she gets away. He kills a couple people in the process, but she gets away. And Cobra finally convinces the powers that be in the police force that there's more than one guy, and the best idea is to let him take her out of town, to draw them away from the city so they don't kill more innocent people. Finally, they relent and they let him do it. And they hold up in this hotel in this small little town. And eventually, the Night Stalker and his gang of motorcycle guys catch up with them, and there's a firefight, and then the ending takes place in like a steel plant. And funny enough, though, the movie, like I was saying, I knew I was going to get back to this, is only 87 minutes long. Originally, it was meant to be around 2 hours long. The studio got nervous that the movie was too long and there was too much time between action set pieces. So they mandated that they cut the movie down, and it ended up only being 87 minutes long. Now, unfortunately, when they did that, they cut out a lot of story, and they cut down on a lot of the violence. There was more kills. They showed a lot more, and they cut all that out, and they cut it down to 87 minutes. Now, the movie's still R-rated. So why they cut out so much of the killing is beyond me, considering you're setting up this band of serial killers. But they did. And the movie's still enjoyable. It's very easy to watch. It's 87 minutes. It goes by really fast. And there's some really good car chases in there and gunfights, as you would expect from an 80s action movie. Every trope in an 80s action movie is in there, which is why we like those movies. I mean, that's why we have fond memories of watching them. Stallone's great in it. Andrew Robinson's good as the prick lieutenant that gives him a hard time. Brigitte Nielsen does pretty good with the role, even though she was a model in real life, I believe. Her and Stallone were married at the time, which would give you an idea why she got the job. She's all right for a model turned actress. She's not bad. I mean, she went on to be in Beverly Hills Cop 2 then, if you're a fan of that series. I don't know what she did after. Well, she was in Rocky 4, obviously, then this, and then Beverly Hills Cop 2, and I don't know what she did after that. Those are the only three movies I remember her from, really. I know she was in Creed 2. She shows up briefly, but those are only movies I think I've ever only seen her in that I can think of off the top of my head. But it's a fun movie. Like I said, they did cut scenes out of it to get the runtime shorter. And funny enough, that version is floating around, a longer version on eBay. But from everything I've read, it's a terrible. The transfer is awful. Now, I've seen some of those scenes that they cut. They used to play it on TV. I saw it on Cinemax or HBO way back. It's been a long time. But when they're holed up in the town, they actually do show the Night Stalker and his band of misfits killing the police and a bunch of the town folks before they go after Cobra and this girl and his partner. And so those are some of the scenes they cut out. And I remember I saw it only once. I never saw it again. And you can't find those scenes they're not on the American Blu-ray or any digital version that's available to us. Supposedly there's rumors that Stallone might go back and put the scenes in. They're just rumors. It'd be nice to see what they cut out, see what the movie could have been before they cut it down to 87 minutes. I'd be interested in seeing that, but, you know, just me would be interested in seeing it. Isn't enough reason to give the studio to do it. They have to make money off it or they're not going to do it. But overall, I give Cobra a 7 out of 10. It's an enjoyable 80s action flick, a good Stallone flick. It's not his best, obviously, but it's fun. It's a movie I revisit about once a year. If you've never seen it and you like 80s action cinema and Stallone in general, it's definitely worth a watch. You could definitely see where the cuts were made. There's some scenes where there's cuts and they cut around kills and there's some information left out. But overall, you can still have a fun time. The other little piece of tidbit that I found was that some of the people that were on set, even the DP, say that Stallone directed most of the movie. That George P. Cosmatos was more like a producer, and Stallone actually directed a lot of the action and most of the picture. Not all, but most of it, they said. Which around that time, I mean, Stallone just directed Rocky 2, 3, and 4, which were huge hits. And I don't know, around that time, Stallone was really wanted his fingerprints all over every picture he did. So I could see that he probably did direct some of them. I mean, later on, he directed The Expendables and then so on and so forth. Rocky Balboa. So it's not like just Stallone's a stranger to directing. But yeah, if you've never seen Cobra, it's definitely worth a watch. I'd highly recommend it. It's fun in all its 80s glory. That's it for me. I'm going to try to get Gremlins in maybe by the end of the week, maybe next week. We'll see. But have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.